So we're talking about modeling bowstring truss roof buildings. And we'll get to why I did this, but bowstring truss roof buildings are all over the place. And they're typically a single story masonry building, but they are rarely modeled. So a little bit about me. I was here a couple of times before. I'm rail fan, grew up in Porter, Indiana, and really spent a lot of time with the New York Central System Historical Society. I'm the corporate secretary now and the modeling committee chairman. But a full disclosure, I'm not an architect involved in the construction industry or a structural engineer. However, I am a locomotive engineer. So that's kind of I run trains in and out of Chicago. So in a blue engine every day. So what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about variations of the bowstring truss, my modeling of Michigan City, industry called Dwyer Products, another industry called Gardex Tools. Those are the two buildings that I've built on prototypes. Selecting building to kit bash and then scratch building one of them. And then looking at the roofs, finishing, and a couple learning points that I learned about. So what is a bowstring truss roof? Kind of see the interior of one here. They're very common, really built from the 20s to the 60s, which they're kind of the peak, but they're still building them today. And they allow for large open spaces with no center supports. We can see here a large building with no center supports, and it's all supported by columns on the wall. So each of the trusses there, weight of the roof is transferred to the columns on the wall. About as big as 125 feet long, and they can be as long or wide and as long as they really need to. And then you can combine multiple spans to get a larger building. So kind of a variation here. This building was built in 1962, and it's got a parapet wall on the end, a brick wall that goes all the way up, and the bowstring truss runs right in it. So kind of a continuous arch roof almost. Another one here, very similar, but the bricks end and the truss goes right up to it, and it's covered in wood. So this is another, I think this was a body shop at the time that it was built, and right across the street from the other one, this was built in 1961. Fire department here, built in 1950. So very similar to that last one. The roof, the arch goes right up to the end of the building. But we're going to talk about and really model what I call a sloped end. I don't know what the technical term is, but this is the kind of building that I'm building. So you have the truss, the round truss in the middle, but then it slopes down to a flat end. And this was a roller skating rink built in 1946, 90 feet long by 130 or 90 feet wide and 130 feet long. It houses a glass company or retail glass company today. And then a bowling alley. Somebody, when I posted this stuff online, oh yeah, that's a bowling alley roof. Well, I started looking at bowling alleys, and yeah, a lot of them do have this type of roof. And this one was built in 1958, 106 feet wide and 44 feet long. Here's a car dealership built in 1960, and it's not as wide. It's only 75 feet wide. And you can see the same arch, and it goes down to a short parapet wall. So really the height of the arch depends on the width. Usually it's about an 8 to 10, but there are 8 to 10 ratio, 8 across and 1 high, or sorry, 8 for every 8 across for every 1 high. So if you're talking a 16 feet wide building, about a 2 or a 2 foot tall arch. So, but there are differences. The slope on the end is dependent on the arch height. The taller the arch, the steeper the slope. But then it is also how far that first arch is from the end of the building. And wider buildings with taller arches tend to have a steeper slope. So, you know, it's all a common ratio. In my modeling in Michigan City, just a basic of the railroads of Michigan City, the green, and if you don't know where Michigan City is, it's not in Michigan, but it's in Indiana on the shores of Lake Michigan, about 5 miles south of the Michigan state line. The green here is the Michigan Central, New York Central, now Amtrak, coming down from Detroit and running to Chicago. The yellow is the Monon, which was a branch line that came up from Louisville and Lafayette. Branch actually started in Monon. The orange is the South Shore, running 10th and 11th Street through town. It had a little industrial branch up into the harbor area. The red is the nickel plate, came up from Indianapolis. And ended in town. And the blue is the Pure Marquette C&O CSX, came down from Grand Rapids and went to Chicago. So I divided the city up into 11 different, what I'm calling layout design elements, just not to use a better term, but each little square, I looked at what's important in that square and modeled that. So put 8 pieces, it shows 7, but I'm planning an 8th one here, and turn that into my layout. So right now I'm working on the nickel plate side, which is the one over on the right. It's where the nickel plate crosses the South Shore. So here we're looking Google Earth photo. We have the nickel plate running really northwest southeast, cutting through the street grid about a 30-degree angle. The South Shore running with the street grid. The South Shore shops are right there in the middle and on the right. And then 2 streets running through the area is Carroll Avenue and Roski Avenue. If you're familiar with the area, it's kind of where I'm modeling. But I'm really, we turn the view here, so kind of we're looking southeast. So the orange is still the South Shore, the blue is the nickel plate, and then the light blue, excuse me, is Carroll Avenue running across the center. But I'm really interested in modeling this area in the yellow box. If it's not inside that yellow box, I don't really care about modeling it. So the South Shore shops are just outside the box. I'm not modeling it. I'm really cared about what's in the box to model. So here's a nickel plate track diagram. To the left is south toward Indianapolis, and then to the bottom right is down toward downtown. And there's 4 industries in this area: Bromwell Wire Goods, Royal Metal Furniture, Gardex Tools, and Dwyer Products. Well, 2 of them, Bromwell and Royal, I'm just going to touch on to, they're in the neighborhood. So what they did, Bromwell made metal kitchen utensils, flour sifters, and then the iconic cubed or rectangular cheese grater, you could say. But if you have a rectangular cheese grater, look at it. It's likely a Bromwell. And then a flour sifter with the little screen on the bottom, likely a Bromwell. But there are a couple different ones. But the cheese graters are more than likely Bromwells. Those were made right there near the intersection of the South Shore and the nickel plate. And then Royal Metal Furniture, well, they made chairs, pretty much. That's all that I've seen that they made, in kind of a 1960s chairs. Bromwell's building still is there. They went out of business in the 80s, and Royal Metal Furniture also went out of business in the 80s. But their building was raised about 2000 or so, late 90s. So Gardex Tools and Dwyer Products. Back here, we've got the South Shore in the orange and the nickel plate on the blue. And Dwyer Products is the large concrete pad on the right. So I have a 23-inch shelf layout, and this is what we got. And the space I have for it is kind of up there at the top, a little siding spur. So going back and researching this, the building was raised in about 2003. I was in the area at that time, but really didn't care for that building, so I didn't photograph it. And then when I started to care about it, it was gone. So this building was built as the Cabernet Corporation in 1926. And what's interesting is it was served by the South Shore on the south side, which is in the front of the view, and the nickel plate on the north side. If you look all the way over on the left, there's a little steam engine. So it was served by 2 railroads on each side of the building. And they made compact kitchens. Well, Cabernet became Dwyer in 1934, and the line continued under the Dwyer name, but they made compact kitchens. So this is your standard 40-inch range, but it's got a refrigerator in the bottom, little storage, 2 electric burner on top, a little cutting area, and a small sink. Some of the larger ones had an oven, so that's probably a 48-inch model with a refrigerator, an oven, 3 electric burners, a sink, and some storage. So compact kitchens was made at this factory. This is kind of a really only able to find 5 or 6 photos of this place, and they all look the same direction, kind of northwest. So that's the South Shore in the front, kind of looking toward the north to the right. Little addition built in the 80s. Really, it's a standard brick building with the Bowstring truss roof. This is the last photo I found, early 2000s photo on the LaPorte County Assessor's webpage that It's the only color photo I was able to find, and the windows were all boarded up with small windows, but same, that's the South Shore in the front there. But Sanborn maps kind of led some clues. As I said, I'm interested in modeling the nickel plate side, so that's the side on the left, but some warehouses up on the, so this view looks west, so west is north, west is on the top, north is to the right. So warehouses on the west side of the building. On the south side of the building is the press room for sheet metal and sheet metal forming. In the middle, porcelain enameling and painting. And on the north end of the building, the nickel plate side, assembly and shipping. So we can see here a little zoomed in platform on the one side, IR platform, really can't figure that out. And LBR stage, lumber stage is kind of what I'm getting along the nickel plate side. But loading dock as for a lumber stage. So I kind of like this building. It's the Walters grocery distributor. It's got rectangular windows, kind of like the prototype, but a little narrower. But I kind of like the grittiness of this building. It kind of fits the neighborhood. And I always say, don't build a Walters catalog layout. If you go to people's layouts and you say, oh, there's Merchants Row 1. Oh, there's Merchants Row 2. Oh, Merchants Row 3's got to be around here somewhere. Or there's the Glacier Gravel Company. The buildings are built just like the Walters boxes. So I advocate for kit bashing buildings and making them not look like the structures that they appear on the box. And even if that's a different coat of paint, it's adding to it. So I took the Walters building, and because it's going up against my backdrop, I just chose three sides here. So the right side, the left side, and as I'll call it the back side, whereas the front side is a little bit shorter. The back side has a utility apartment shown there in the red, and 3 loading dock doors and a man door instead of 4 loading dock doors on the other side. So I kind of rearranged the walls and put it together, and yeah, that kind of fits the area. So that was the basis for the structure part of the building. Moving on to Gardex Tools, it's right next door, served by the South Shore, had a little spur coming in, and then the South Shore main was on the back side, or really the south side of the building. Again, 23-inch shelf, and I got a little spur heading to it. The main building was built in 1908 as the Consumers, I got it under here, I can't see, Consumers Fountain Company or something, manufacturers of water coolers. By 1922, the building housed Angston Knox, manufacturer of auto bodies and accessories. 1936, it housed Keenly Furniture, manufacturers of upholstered furniture. And all this came from different Sanborn maps. By 1950, Gardex had moved into the building. I don't know if Gardex started in 1938, but I don't know if it started in this building or not. That's kind of a gray area, if it started in the building or it moved into the building after it started. But 1950, it had 75 employees. And they made the line of soil flow garden tools. So rakes, hoes, sickles, and stuff like that. So another thing, something that was made. And they closed down as the manufacturer in the 70s. And the building still stands today. But if you look at it, that's a 2-story roof building. And it doesn't... that's not a bowstring truss. Today it's used for storage, but its 1948 edition or post 1948 edition is a bowstring truss roof. And this is about a 1960 John Fuller collection photo. We can see the 1948 edition right behind the pilot of the South Shore 800, and then a little further in the background, there's Gardex Tools. So both buildings in the same shot. So nickel plate is all the way over on the right-hand side of the frame there. So the building, the addition, is almost 200 feet long, and I have about 10 inches to work with. So some selective compression on the building is needed. So I'm kind of looking at some details of the building. It's got a concrete block construction, high set paired windows. The roof slightly overhangs on the side, and it's got the bowstring truss roof with a truck dock on the end. So I took those and really couldn't fit the truck dock on, so built the walls with pike stuff, cinder block walls, some Tichy double hung 2x2 windows, and a pike stuff door. Not shown here is 20 by 100 styrene strips for the window sills. So all together, that's kind of what they look like. In that the top one is the main, would be the westward facing wall, or sorry, the eastward facing wall. The middle one there's the north wall, and then the one there that doesn't have any windows is the west wall, which I put windows in after this photo. I cut 2 windows into that west wall. So how to model the bowstring truss roof? Well, we kind of can see that there's an arch there, and it's got stringers between the arches, and then it's got a covering. So if I, going back to my model airplane days, that's kind of like a model airplane structure that you can just cover and then make it work from there. So how to make the arch? Well, I thought I put a tape measure up on the bottom of the building. I'm like, yeah, an inch high arch would look correct, but that was before I realized it was 1 to 10 and 1 to 12s were common. So this is about a 1 to 8, but I think it still works. So my son is a geotechnical civil engineer, senior year at Purdue, already accepted into grad school in Colorado. So I sent him this photo, and how to figure my text said how to find R, and I wanted to find the radius of a circle that I knew the secant, which is a line running from one point on a circle to the other point on a circle, that was 1 inch in the center from 1 inch from the center of the circle. So I sent him this, and he texted me back, simple trigonometry. And I'm like, okay, kid, that helps me out a lot. So I'm thinking to myself, I haven't had trigonometry in 30 something years back in high school. So I'm thinking sine, cosine, and tangent. That was the only thing I remember. And today, sine is a billboard on the side of the road. Cosine is something you need for a loan, and tangent is that model railroad company that kind of wants to lighten my wallet every couple months. So a couple minutes later, he sends this screenshot back of AutoCAD, and looking on their geometry, diameter radius 16.32. And I'm like, kid, I wanted the formula so I could share the formula, but he never gave it to me. So he uses AutoCAD to figure it out. So 16.32, close enough to 16 and a quarter, which works for me. So now I know a radius of this circle. So I went to rip some 1/8 inch hardboard to 11 and a quarter inches, the width of the building, drew a center line down the sheet, and then I made a radius jig and attached it to a trim router, which is an oversized Dremel tool. And the center of the trim router, so it's kind of a radius arm, so I'm able to cut radiuses. And so I cut some nice little arches, and the thickness of the radius doesn't matter because it's going to be, or thickness of the arches doesn't matter because it's going to be buried inside the roof. All I really was worried about was the top smoothness of the arch. So I built a little frame around it, and at the time I figured out some of the structural terms. The purlins are the pieces that run across the arch, that run from arch to arch to arch. The rafters run from the front arch plate down to the front, and the around the roof is called the top wall plate. So everything is connected there. And if you're building a building with a parapet wall, you don't need the rafters. You just put that first arch right against the wall and run purlins. But one thing here, you need to watch where you put that first arch. You don't want to put it on top of a window or a door, because that's where the weight is supported. So I marked the areas that I could put the arch in little black Sharpie, and you can see them there in front of the C-clamps. And then I moved the arch forward and backward to see, yeah, that's about right. So it's a lot of what looks good, what looks right. So I already talked about that. The frame here is made out of 3/32 basswood. And again, 1/8 inch arch, 1/8 inch hardboard. And then the purlins, I just made them long, and I'll trim them later. And then the rafters were individually cut to fit. So from that first arch to the front of the building, each one was cut to fit. The other side, the other building for Gardex Tools Edition, again, a 1/8 inch hardboard, but because this one sits on top of the structure instead of inset, I cut a piece of hardboard to fit the entire side, and then again had the the arches that I set on top and glued it all together. And I'll get to it in a little bit, but the rafters here are 1/8 inch basswood, and then the purlins here are 1/8 by 1/4 inch. I needed to beef it up a little bit, and I'll get to that why. But this is kind of what the frame of the building looks like. Set it on top. I'm like, yeah, that looks about right. And here I marked instead of where I could put it, you can kind of see on top of the window was the Sharpie mark where I didn't put it. So I think that I just marked, had a Sharpie there and marked it. And with the first one, okay, this is where I could put it. And this one was where I didn't put it. As long as you mark where you can and can't put it, or mark which one you need to, it's going to work. So sheathing it, 1/32 inch balsa sheet. And for the front, it kind of arches or kind of bends around. And if you bend a piece of balsa sheet, it wants to bend one way and not bend the other way. So if you put the way that it wants to bend down, and you can kind of work it around. So the front end piece is a 6-inch piece, and I think it's only about 4 inches. So there's about 1.5 inches of overlap or so. And just line it up against the arch, and then with a CA glue and accelerator, just line it up, hit that first rafter, and glue it down. Roll the roof along the edge, and then kind of work that piece of balsa sheet so it gets to fit. And with fast drying CA glues and instant kickers, you can move right from one to one. And I had the whole thing sheathed in about 5 minutes. The next sheet goes from the between the arches. So there I just started on one end and then rolled the roof, and then as I worked down the roof, just hit it with a bead of glue and accelerator, went to the next one, and so forth, and had a nice arched roof, and then trimmed the edges with a razor saw. And then here, the reason why this is the Gardex one, the Walthers Kit Bash, why I beefed it up, if you look there, you can kind of see where that roof line, where the flat roof would be set in, there's kind of a ridge there in the building. The roof's not really flat with this lightweight 3/32 basswood. So it's not necessarily a bad thing because it kind of gives a little runoff area in the center. But for a flat roof, I think that going with the hardboard base is going to be a little bit better. I don't think I'll go with a thin framework like I did with this one, but it worked out for a good thing. But the second building there is why I went with the other one. So it's kind of what it looks like. And I'm like, the non-painted and the bass, or the balsa color against a white backdrop, kind of gives you a little optical illusion. But if you kind of look at the front of the building instead of looking at the back, you can kind of see, yeah, that kind of works out. And then the shadow on the right-hand side there kind of hides it a little bit, but I think that it accurately models that type of roof. So I'm happy. There's some bumps in it. So I got a 1-inch by 30-inch sanding belt from Menards and put it on a piece of scrap plywood cut to length, and used it as a big sanding block. So sanded off the high sides, and it kind of all worked out. For covering the roof, I got some vinyl backed or adhesive backed vinyl sheets from Hobby Lobby, silver, and I cut them in. I think it was about a 14-inch by 14-inch piece or so, maybe 18 inches, and I cut it into 1-inch strips. And then I alternated the top and the bottom, so you can kind of see on the main part of the roof there is the two different colors. It's the same sheet. It's just one's facing the one way and one's facing the other way. And then across the slope part, I angled those down. For weathering, I took a mix of black acrylic and charcoal paint, kind of thinned a little bit, and put it on there and wiped it off. And it kind of got into the seams of the tape or the vinyl sheet, and kind of gave me the look that I wanted. I did the same thing, but used brown adhesive because the roof was darker, cut it into 1-inch strips and put it on. And it's the brown kind of had a semi-gloss look to it, and it looked like shit. So if you don't succeed the first time, pull it off and try again. So what I ended up doing was cutting regular computer printer paper into 1-inch strips and applying it with duct, put them in water, got them a little wet, and then applied it with white glue, and then painted it black. And then with the charcoal, black, and burnt umber acrylic washes on top. So I think that worked quite well, and modeled the kind of roof and the texture that I was looking for. It didn't really fit a little bit, so I had to do a little sanding, a little on a piece of sandpaper on a flat surface, just sanded it square. But because of the roof arched a little bit, putting it in the building, it really didn't want to fit. So I had to really force it. So I put it on a bar clamp and then got the front end on, and you can see on the right-hand side, it really doesn't fit there. But with a little bit of force and a little bit of CA glue and accelerator, it fit, but it warped the building. And I can, when I mount the building down, I can force that warp back out. But right now, just sitting loose, the building is a little bit warped because of the roof was a little bit warped. And I think if you go with a that hardboard base, I think that'll take the warp out. So added some gutters to the Gardex building, which is 60 thousandths 1/4-inch round styrene. Built a loading dock from styrene strips and sheets for the Dwyer building. Little bit of weathering powders. This is inside of a computer power supply. I was converting one to a computer power supply into an electronic power supply. So took it all out and cut the wires out. And I'm like, oh, look at all this great dust. So took a brush and kind of dusted it on there and dusted it into the doors and cracks and then sealed it. So that worked. Free what's that? Pan pastel colors. So from the inside of a computer power supply. Needed a little weathering on the white of the concrete block. So I have my dirty brush water cleaning for click paint and just mopped that on there and wiped it off, and it kind of worked. Added a little more acrylic wash to the roofs, kind of put it on wet, wiped it off. So we have Dwyer products. This is the South Shore side, and the north side, this is kind of what the finished building looks like. And then the Gardex edition, there's the one, and then on the back side with a Walther, the 2-story is Walther's modulars built together, but there's the addition and the 2 put together. So that's kind of how they look finished. Still some scenery and other little details to go on, but the majority of the construction is done. So learning points again, if I'm going to do another one, I'd use the hardboard sill all the way around, even for parapet walls, to reduce the warping. And really, that's all that I have with that. Michigan City Terminal Model Railroad on Facebook is where I post all my modeling projects. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Curious why you use basswood for the covering over the arches, etc., rather than thin styrene.
Then thin string?
Styrene. Styrene.
Oh, styrene.
Right.
I have a stack of basswood. So really everything, the only thing that I had to buy was the roofing material, you know, the okay. What's it called? You know, the 3/32 or the 1/32 sheet basswood. Everything else I had here. And CA glue holds with wood a lot better than it does with styrene. So that's kind of why I went with it. I just have a stock of the stuff here. Okay. So yeah, if I wouldn't really go with styrene, but you know, because of the grain and how well CA glue works with basswood and balsa wood, that's why I went with it. I didn't even think of styrene at the time. But if that's your medium, I guess you could.
Seth, this is Dave Nelson. What kind of roof details would they usually put on these sorts of roofs, like vents or things of that sort?
Well, being a locomotive engineer in Chicago on an elevated railroad, on the second floor of a bi-level cab car, I look at a lot of roofs, and there's everything from vents to air conditioning machinery. If we go back to the addition here, oh, nope, shit, wrong way. I have to go all the way down here. No, we can go up a couple. If you look here, really on the addition, there's not any. We can see a big on the older part, this big cyclone dust collector, but really on that one, there's really not a lot of vents, but it depends what's going on inside. If there's I think you might, yeah, there's a cyclone vent on that one. That second building there was not on the Sanborn maps. So I don't know what they were doing in that second building off to the left, but let's see some other photos here, back to the prototypes. But anything, air conditioning vents, regular cyclone vents. So anything that is needed to be vented from the inside, I think is a good, let's see, go back to, not that photo. Yeah, can kind of look off there on the left-hand side there in the white. There's a couple little vents, but really anything that they need to happen on the inside. So, but air conditioning and other cyclone vents and stuff like that, it all depends on what's going on the inside, I think is the best answer.
And since you've seen those things on your commute in and out of Chicago, do they, because it's a curved roof, do they build a little platform then to keep the components like air conditioners level in that? So,
really, I've seen them. I would think it depends on how they're supported from the inside. If it's a chimney, then you're going to be going all the way down to the ground. But some of the air conditioning condensers, they do have a little grid or a little stand on the inside, but really not on the bottom, but really not built into the roof.
okay.
So
Great job, Seth. That was really interesting, and
Thank you.
nice job on those models. It looks good.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. At Naperville, I had them on the table under a cloth, and when I got to that point, I pull them off, and I'm like, oh, here they are. And then I'm like, they're kind of sturdy, so go ahead, pick them up. And then the whole group of 50 people kind of ran to the table, and they're flipping it upside down. And I'm like, you're not going to break it. If you break it, it's okay. It's just a model railroad building. But they were all taking pictures and stuff like that. So it's a common roof that's around all over the place. They're really not railroad structures, but industries, but smaller industries, and they're rarely ever modeled. And I got two of them side by side. So
yeah, that's great. Very well done.
And I'll stop my share there.
Yeah.
All right.
Good. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Seth. And for the rest of us, we're back on the air here after a respite during November due to my travel. So if anybody wants to present in December, let me know. My plan is, I'm trying to remember. I mean, I don't really think that we interfere with New Year's or Christmas by going Thursday. So my thought is we'll just keep going, and if we get a small group, no big deal, because we'll record it and people can view it at their leisure. But anyway, yeah. So if you want to present, let me or Ron know, and we'll go with it. Anything else, gentlemen? All right. Well, have a great Thursday, and thanks again, Seth. Nicely done.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
So.
Right.